So if you see Eddie afterwards when we're finished, ask him for a sticker, a free sticker from us. I also run the Junior Developer Meetup here in Orlando. So that's called Project Codex, or Project Code Experience. Walk over here where there's more room. So our meetup focused towards helping junior developers. So if you're a junior developer, come on out. We'll try and help you. My name's Warrick. I'm a JavaScript developer, so I work with React, Vue, Node, Docker, AWS, all that garbage. That's me. Today I want to talk about demystifying progressive web apps. So does anybody know what a PWA is? Anybody totally clueless? Thank you. Okay. So by the time you walk out of here, you should have some idea if I do anything correct. So what is a PWA? We know it stands for Progressive Web App, but what does that mean, right? So if you look to Ionic, which is a framework that kind of wraps web applications and lets you deploy them to iOS, Android, mobile, web, they describe it as a web app with modern web capabilities that delivers an app-like experience. Is that crystal clear? Clear as mud? So really, a progressive web app is just a website, okay? So the progressive in the name means that your users can log on to this application as a website and then install it to their device, whatever that is, a phone, your desktop computer, and then it becomes kind of an app-like experience. So that's the progression from website to app. And if you look up the requirements for a progressive web app on Google, this is the list that you're going to get. So it has to be secure, has to be served over HTTPS, it's got to be responsive, has to have a manifest, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The first load should be under 10 seconds on 3G. Anybody have a 3G phone? Anybody only get 3G? Okay. It should work cross-browser. Page transition should not block the network. Does that make sense to anybody? Any React developers in here? Yeah, so whenever you're navigating a website, if you click on a link, it shouldn't give you a white screen and download everything from the server. You should be able to click around and navigate, just like we see in React, Vue, Angular, all those good frameworks that we're probably already working with. And then each page should have a URL for deep linking, meaning that if I want to go to the dashboard in your application, I should be able to go to like your website /dashboard and get straight into it. So here's a quote from me. PWAs are just SPAs, best practices, and a little bit extra code. So single page applications are those things that we just talked about: Vue, React, Angular, Svelte, all that good stuff. I saw this really cute chart on another PWA talk, so I copied it with some permission. I didn't get permission, but. So SPAs is the blue circle, and then a little bit extra in purple on the outside is the stuff that you have to do to make your web app a progressive web app. And those things are a manifest, support install events, and service workers. Anybody heard of service workers? Anybody like service workers? All the hands went down. Okay. Except for Dylan. So how do we, get this stuff into our web apps? So the big three things that we just mentioned: installation, manifest, and service workers. Installation events are still being worked out in the W3 spec. If anybody's familiar with that, that's a specification from the Web Consortium of best practices and like how you should implement things for your browser. Installation events are only supported by Chrome currently. So you can't jump onto Firefox and start coding against installation events. Safari, out of the question. But if you're on Chrome, you're in good shape. Manifest.json, kind of the same story. So this is just a JSON file with a little bit of information pointing to like what is your icon for your app, what should it be called, what should the splash screen look like, that sort of thing. Also not very well supported, so you've got to do some backfills with like meta tags and that sort of thing. And then service workers, everybody's favorite. So these are the most widely supported thing, but also the hardest to implement. Has anybody ever jumped on like Twitter or Pinterest or whatever and seen this little snack bar on an Android phone? Show of hands, yeah? Okay, so what that's telling you is, hey, you're on a progressive web app. So if you have an Android device or you're on Chrome, you're gonna see this more and more as time goes on. Chrome is supporting progressive web apps by allowing you to install them very easily. So they fire off this snack bar. If you're on a desktop, you'll see in the URL bar a little install button pop up with a plus, and that will allow you to install that app. There is a formal process to hook into that with code on Chrome. So they have like an event that fires in the background, and you can like attach to that install event and fire it later whenever their user actually agrees to install. But for now, they're kind of helping us out by adding this little snack bar. Manifest file. So like I said, this is just JSON. This is the manifest file for an app that I'm going to show in a little bit. You've got like a name for the app, some icons at different resolutions, what your start URL is, and theme colors for the splash screen that comes up whenever your user uses it. And all you have to do is stick this in the head tag on your website as a link, and that should be all that you need. Unfortunately, these aren't super well supported, so you can check out Can I Use. It's like all red except for Chrome. There's also a polyfiller that I believe the Google team has put out. So you can use that, and it will add in those other meta tags that you would need. What about service workers? So Dave Geddes has an amazing game for service workers if you're into that thing and want to nerd out on it. But he describes them as a powerful but tricky little script. If you jump onto Google's website, they say that it is a type of web worker and it runs separately from the main browser thread. So while your JavaScript and your app is running on the main thread, doing whatever it needs to do in the background in a separate process, the service worker can cache files, load images, do background sync, push notifications, and all that good stuff. So anybody heard of Svelte? A couple of people? So Rich Harris is the developer for Svelte, and super smart guy. This is his take on service workers. Lost so much time to service worker nonsense, debugging nightmare, bogglingly huge API, burn it all and start again. So service workers are pretty hard to work with. It's not something that I really recommend that you dive into head first. Luckily, you don't have to. So if you're working with Create React App, the Angular CLI, the Vue CLI, there's a plugin or configuration setting to make your application a PWA out of the box. If you're on WordPress, there's a WordPress plugin for it. If you're using Gatsby, ViewPress, Angular Universal, Next.js, Nuxt, or GridSum, they all have plugins that will kind of kickstart you into PWA mode. There's also a MDN cookbook that has like example code for you for whatever goal you're trying to achieve. So if you want to cache files or do background sync and all that kind of stuff, there's a great example code base. And then Google has their own higher level library for it called Workbox. So the Create React App folks and I believe the Angular team are using Workbox to achieve those features. Or if you want to roll your own, jump into Google Docs and W3 Spec, and good luck to you, sir. Or man. So, what does it actually take, now that I've said all that, to make an app a PWA? So I'm not going to demo this, but if you go to leewarrick.com/goaler, this is a to-do app that I made last year, and I made it with Create React App and Firebase. So what I had to do was I had to create a JSON file, the manifest file, with some icons that I got for free on the internet, added a couple of meta tags to supplement that, and then added one line to index.js. So I changed it from serviceworker.unregister to serviceworker.register. And that's it, boom, ready to go, PWA. So has anybody seen something similar like this in Chrome before? That's the audits tab in Chrome. So whenever you inspect a page, look at the top where the console and stuff is, scroll over to audits. They have an awesome program called Lighthouse built into Chrome that will score your website and will tell you if this thing is a PWA or not. I also made another app in Gatsby. It's like a spoken translation app. So whenever you're talking about like PWAs versus native apps, there's a lot of discussion over like native APIs, meaning like the fingerprint scanner on a phone or the camera, the phone functionality and stuff like that. The web is catching up to that very quickly. So with this app, you can press a button, speak into your phone, and it will translate on the fly. And then when you press the play button, it will read it back to you in whatever language that is. all using Chrome native built-in features and whatever's on your device currently. So to build this into a PWA from just like a regular Gatsby starter, I had to add 2 plugins. So npm install, Gatsby plugin manifest, Gatsby plugin offline, point to an app icon that I again got for free off a website, and that was it. So almost 100s across the board and PWA. Side note, also built my blog into a PWA using Gatsby, and not being like a performance expert or anything like that, got all 100s across the board on Lighthouse. And if you didn't know, there's like little fireworks that go off whenever you do that. So I challenge you to go home, read my blog, and check out the fireworks. So if there's any business-minded people in here, or you're a developer like me and you're having a hard time convincing your boss to let you write a PWA, let's talk about some numbers. So if we implement all this stuff that we've been talking about, what are we going to get? You're going to get an app-like experience without writing a native app. You're going to be discoverable on search engines, so if you put your app on the App Store, you can't Google it and discover it. You're going to get potential for repeat traffic through installs. So if somebody has your application on their phone as an icon, they're going to be more likely to visit that because they can just tap it and use it. And you may get some offline capabilities through service workers. What you won't get is an actual legit native app. You still need to use something else for that. So either write it natively, check out Ionic, Flutter. There's a couple of great talks on that today. You won't get into the iOS store. Apple is touch and go with PWAs, so they like to support some things and not other things. You won't get access to all of the native APIs that are on a device, but through browser technology like we talked about, you can get a lot of stuff done. So using the camera, speech to text, that kind of thing is seeing better and better support as time goes on. And you don't get anything basically beyond what JavaScript can do, but that's a lot. So talk is cheap. Let's talk about some stats. Pinterest, they took their mobile site and made it a PWA, and they saw core engagements increase by 60%. Forbes made a PWA, and they saw loads in 2.5 seconds on mobile, compared to 6.5 for its previous site. And Twitter, which we saw earlier with the snack bar, they saw a 65% increase in pages per session, 75% increase in tweets, and 20% decrease in bounce rate, meaning that people were staying on that site longer now that it's been rewritten as a PWA. And if you're into stats and you're a bit of a nerd like me, you can go to pwastats.com and check out a lot of that. If you are dead set on doing a native app, I have a couple of stats for you from Smashing Ideas. So most smartphone users download 0 apps a month. How many people in here have downloaded an app this month? Not too many, right? But everybody has a cell phone, right? So that's kind of bad numbers. 80% of those apps that were installed were uninstalled within 1 week. And despite both of those things, there's a 20% increase in mobile sales and revenue. So people are buying phones, they're using phones, that's not a surprise, but they're using fewer and fewer native apps. Got a couple more interesting numbers. Jumia, which is a e-commerce site in Africa, saw a 12-time increase in mobile users and a 50% reduction in bounce rate. Anybody have any ideas on why that is? Yeah, exactly. So they've got lower-end devices, they've got poorer connections than you and I do here in the States. So for their device, it's a lot faster to load a PWA, which is just a website, versus a native app, which has to be bundled with a lot of other code. So you can see that in this other chart here on the right. A PWA loads, on average, 15 times faster than a native app, which means that your users are getting less frustrated by waiting for their device to load your content. So that being said, when does it make sense to make a PWA over a regular SP or website? So if you need an app-like experience, but you don't need all those crazy native APIs like fingerprint scanner, or I don't know, there's probably some more like Apple Pay, stuff like that. Maybe not such a great idea just yet. Maybe check out like Ionic or Flutter or something like that. If you have a site that has a lot of potential for repeated usage, which is most of them, and if you'd like to check out some offline capabilities, background sync, push notifications, that sort of thing, might be time to start thinking about a PWA. So some examples for that, like a subway map site. So you don't really care to download whatever New York City's subway app. You just want to like look at the map as a quick reminder and get where you need to go and not be bothered with that huge download. That makes a lot of sense. Or a movie times app. And when you're going to the movies, you want to access that quickly, take a quick look, be done with it, and on with your day. So it makes a lot of sense for it to just be like a website. Or, if you've ever asked yourself, oh my gosh, really, I have to install this app? Probably makes sense to do a PWA. So, I know that PWAs are still being kind of hashed out as far as W3 spec, and Apple and Google are still fighting over things. But I think that support's going to continue to increase, so maybe try them out. It's more of an if than a when at this point, I think. Browser support is going to continue to improve, thank God, as web developers. And there's not really any downsides that I've read as far as implementing them. I read one GitHub issue that was from like 3 or 4 years ago that said an old version of IE actually crashed because of the service worker, but I have not seen that. And with any luck, IE will finally die soon. So yeah, PWAs are an incredible opportunity to make better experiences. Thank you. If you want to see a recording of this talk or catch the links or whatever, I have a recording of it up at leewarrick.com. Please reach out at leewarrick@gmail.com and check out the podcast and see Eddie for some stickers. Any questions? Yes.
When the user launches the PWA, does it open a full browser or is it captured to whatever is browsing?
It depends on the device.
Okay.
So as far as like Chrome is concerned, if you open up a Chrome PWA, it will launch like a headless browser, so you don't see the URL bar, you don't see the navigation buttons by default. So you go to like one of those websites, Twitter, one of my apps that I talked about, leewarrick.com/blog or something like that, it'll pop up that little snack bar on Android and you can install it and you can see what all you get. So it's basically just the website without all of the browser's buttons and UI and stuff like that. Yeah, Phil.
Do you know I haven't built this in ages and jQuery. When it gets mounted as a PWA, like after you've installed it, is there a state difference in like say you're using React? Like can you tell it's being run as a PWA versus just inside Chrome? So you can like change the UI?
Do you mean is there like a way to hook into the like?
Yeah, like is there a Chrome setting like in the window so you know like you're currently mounted as a PWA versus?
Not that I know. I haven't seen anything at least. Yes.
Do you have any sense of kind of what the barriers are for APIs being implemented by browsers?
So there's a lot of business reasons for this push between Apple and Google. Apple makes a ton of money from keeping you on the App Store. So they want you to use apps that are through the App Store. They get like 30% of all money made through that. Whereas if you're on, just a website, you circumvent that entirely. So if you're able to use PWAs on an iPhone, why would you ever bother with the App Store? So they would lose money. Google, on the other hand, they are ad revenue based. So the more traffic that they're able to get, the better they're going to do. So they're focused on making the experience better for the end user. So if things can be faster, which PWAs can offer, they're going to push that as hard as they can.
Can we expect some more native APIs to implement like native integrated APIs implemented like Chrome by
I think so. Like I said, Chrome and Google is really pushing hard for PWAs. You can take a PWA and actually deploy it on the Google Play Store. So it puts like a little wrapper around it that's lightweight, and you can download it through the Play Store. So they're really pushing in that direction pretty hard. Any other questions? Yes.
I wonder, does authentication cause any problems for PWAs? So if my user installs the website as an aggressive web app, does it mean that the HTTP needs to be that's unauthenticated, or are keys stored?
So it's going to work exactly the same as a website would.
Okay.
So most of what we talked about is just like best practices. You should do this, you should do that, and then we'll call it a progressive web app. But you're not building anything that's any different from a regular React app or a regular Vue app. So it's not the same as like Ionic or Flutter, where you build something and you're using like a native widget or something that's like a button that renders into an iOS button that renders into like a Cupertino iOS thing or whatever. When you're using a PWA, it's just a website, so it's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And it's a little wrapper of the browser around that.
So if I save something in local storage, it will be available in installation as well?
Correct, yeah. You can use local storage. You can make calls to an API that you stand up just like you would with a regular website. Cool, if there's no other, oh, yes.
How about offline? Any tips of how to design PWAs with like online, but then you go offline, come back online?
So as a completely novice developer, I made that to-do app, Goaler. And what I found was because I used Firebase and had made that into a PWA, I had both the service worker working for me and the real-time database that Google offers through Firebase. So what it does is I can hit airplane mode on my phone while I'm using that app and check off things on that to-do list, add things, whatever. And when I turn the network back on, it will do background sync. So it's like constantly polling for a connection, but that's mostly through Firebase. As far as service workers, they are kind of built to do exactly what you're talking about, but background sync is still not supported on Safari and that whole iOS ecosystem, so it's only through Chrome right now. So if you're interested in exploring that, highly recommend checking out Dave Ged's. It's a game that teaches you service workers called Service Workies. Yeah, it's pretty terrible, but it's an awesome game. It's all built with web technology. And the previous speaker, David Khorshid, who wrote XState, he uses XState for all those games and stuff. So super cool guy, free game to teach you everything that you could ever care to learn about service workers. So check that out. All right, if there's no other questions, thank you.